Okay, the next piece is by works from Joseph Arch. This is Dr. Vivian Thomas, and Viv is a lecturer in Shakespeare, but he's going to turn his oratory skills to Joseph Arch. Viv.
Thank you. Thank you, Ian. With this crowd, I feel perhaps I ought to start Friends, Romans, Countrymen. However, just before I metamorphose into Joseph Arch, which I will do with this cap, I ought to say one or two things about this remarkable man, who is clearly the most remarkable man from this entire area. In his autobiography, he provides a vivid description and powerful critique of the social conditions and institutions prevailing in his childhood, in a language which is direct and biting. He saw servitude as incompatible with citizenship. Poverty was something to be overcome rather than to be endured. He recognized at an early age that changes which would improve the lot of the whole of society would be opposed by those in positions of power, because such changes would undermine the social and economic control exercised by the elite. In his political career, both inside and outside Parliament, he fought hard for a genuine Allotment Act, so that labourers would secure a means of guaranteeing their families an adequate subsistence in hard times, with the possibility of gaining a modest but improving sufficiency consequent upon economic changes and reforms. His programme aimed at enhancing the prosperity of the common man without in any way diminishing the prospects and opportunities of their social superiors. His cost-benefit analysis demonstrated that society as a whole would benefit from the allocation of allotments to all rural workers. None of these proposals and policies aimed at overturning or even undermining the prevailing political and economic order, but merely to enhance the living conditions of poor landless workers, and in doing so improve the well-being of society as a whole. Opposition to these modest aspirations came from people prepared to sacrifice economic efficiency and social well-being in order to retain the power attaching to a master-servant mindset. A preference for retaining a social hierarchy in which the lowly apologized for their existence rather than being able to look upon their betters eye to eye, man to man, woman to woman, and to create a genuine commonwealth. I'll make three little extracts from his speeches, first relating to his childhood circumstances, then the establishment of this tremendous union which changed the landscape of British society, and thirdly, the quest for a genuine allotments bill for agricultural workers. I shall be selective because I realise that this is only a little part of today's celebrations. Those who ruled in high places, said Joseph. New identity. You might be a little perplexed by the accent. However, it was very different in the 19th century, I can assure you. I also discovered that he made some very good Welsh friends and acquired a patina of a Welsh accent. Those who ruled in high places and had the makings of the laws in their hands were chiefly rich landowners and successful traders, and instead of trying to raise the people to create a higher standard of comfort and well-being and better their general conditions, they did their best, or their worst, to keep them in a state of poverty and serfdom, dependence and wretchedness. They thought that when a labourer could no longer work, he had lost the right to live. Work was all they wanted from him, and he was to work and hold his tongue. And if he could not work, what was the use of him? He was made to labour for his betters, without complaint, on a starvation wage. Where no more work could be squeezed out of him, he was no better than a cumberer of other folks' ground, and the proper place was the churchyard, where he would be sure to lie in a few feet of earth and want neither food nor wages anymore. A quick death and cheap burying was the motto of those extortioners of men past work. My mother was not a favourite of the rectory from the first. She did not order herself lowly and reverently towards her betters according to the church catechism. She would not duck to the rector's wife just because he happened to be the rector's wife. And she was not properly and humbly thankful for coals and soup. A smooth face and a smooth tongue was what their benefactors required of them, and they got both. My proud spirit smarted and burned when I saw what happened at the communion service. First walked up the squire to the communion stalls. The farmers went next, then up went the tradesmen, the shopkeepers, the wheelwright and the blacksmith, and then, very last of all, went the poor agricultural labourers in their smock coats. They walked up themselves, nobody else knelt with them. It was as if they were unclean. The teaching in most of the village schools then was almost beyond belief. Much knowledge of the right sort is a dangerous thing for the poor might have been the motto put over the door of the village school. The less book learning the labourers had stuffed into him, the better and the safer for those above him. These gentry did not want him to know, they did not want him to think, they wanted him to work. When they, the agricultural labourers, did start a sick fund, the parson, the farmers and the leading men of the parish did their very best to put it down, to stamp it out with their despotic heels. The labourer who had fallen out of work through illness should be supported even in a time from a common fund which the rectory had no direct control was gall and wormwood to the parson. Worse still, the labourer's wife would not be so ready to come to the rectory back door humbly begging for help. We labourers had no lack of lords and masters. There were the parson and his wife at the rectory. There was the squire with his hand of iron overshadowing us all. There was no velvet glove on that hard hand. At the sight of the squire, the people trembled. He lorded it right feudally over his tenants, the farmers. The farmers, in their turn, tyrannised over the labourers. The labourers were no better than toads under the harrow. Most of the farmers were oppressed the poor. They put on the iron wage screws and screwed the labourer's wages down below the living point. They stretched him on the rack of lifelong poverty. With corn at a prohibitive price, with fresh meat hardly within the reach, with potatoes that were hoarded up, what were the people to do? They could not grow potatoes, they had no allotments then, and the bulk of the labourers had no gardens. With the Warwickshire, when he finally establishes the Agricultural Labourers' Union, the first 2 points to be made was this: the name of the society shall be the Warwickshire Agricultural Labourers' Union. Its object is to elevate the social position of the farm labourers of the country by assisting them to increase their wages, to lessen the number of ordinary working hours, to improve their habitations, to provide them with gardens or allotments, and to assist the deserving and suitable labourers to migrate or to emigrate. The union, it is calculated, had between 40 and 50,000 members. Finally, land, that's what we were all thinking and talking about, and the idea of an Allotment Act was in the air. And I think, he said, the same rent should be charged to the labourer as it charged to the farmer. The rule, however, is to charge the labourer excessively, to make him pay 20, 30, even 40% more for his land than the farmer does. Finally, Joseph Arch, being elected to Parliament in 1885 for the constituency of North West Norfolk, he polled twice the number of votes as Sir Brampton Gordon. In my address to the electors, I said I would support the extension of free trade to all articles of food, a measure for conferring local government by boards upon county districts, the complete reform of the landlords, compensation for improvements in the soil, total abolition of the laws of distress, power to give government of local boards to acquire reasonable purchase price and relate them to the allotments, and equal laws for all part of the kingdom. I rose to make my maiden speech in January, on the 26th of January 1886, in which I opposed Mr. Chaplin's allotment bill, which was really a fake bill. I said, we do not ask for borrowed funds or for the land to be given us, and we have no desire to steal it. What the Amendments Act asks, and what I, an honourable gentleman on both sides of the House, I plead to, is whether the time is not come when these thousands of industrious and willing workers should no longer be shut out from the soil and should have the opportunity of obtaining a fair foothold and producing food for themselves and their families. I say, fearless of contradiction, that there are tens of thousands of acres of land waiting for the hand of the workman, and what this House ought to consider and aim at is to use every legitimate means to bring that land and that cries out for labour to the labourer as soon as possible. I pitched into Chaplin's allotments bill. I said, as an agricultural labourer, I looked upon it as a perfect insult to me, and what was an insult to me was an insult to my class. I did not intend that the labourers and the working men of England be bamboozled with such a miserable bill. If a working man in any village required to have half an acre of land, and he was to have no more, he was to be compelled to get 4 ratepayers to sign a requisition to take to the magistrates. Why, I said, who would be the 4 ratepayers to sign the requisition? I asked a noble member of the House of Commons whether 4 ordinary farmers would be induced to sign, or 4 tradesmen, say the blacksmith, the butcher, the grocer, and the baker in the village. They would not sign it for the simple reason that as soon as they set themselves up to do anything for social elevation of the agricultural labourer, they would be boycotted. Finally, and this is it, nor the Small Holdings Act are of much use to the labourers. We must have parish councils. By conferring upon these councils the control of the charities, the administration of the poor law, many of the abuses of the present existing will be disposed of. These councils too must take over the matters of rating and education in the villages. Then, above all, they must have the power to compulsorily acquire as much land for the labourer as he wants at the same rent as the land is letting in the district. The labourers must, moreover, have conceded to them the right to sell their improvements if they choose.
Oh, okay, right.
I was strong on that point. Meetings.
How long have you got, Ian?
Finally, once these parish councils have been established and given their new powers, I was strong on the point that meetings must be held in the evenings so that men could attend, otherwise the parson and squire would manipulate them. There was another thing I said. Hodge never forgets his friends and he never forgets his enemies. Now is the time of the allotments bill on fair play for the common working man.
Stand up now. The gentry are all round, on each side they are found, their wisdom so profound, to cheat us all our ground. Stand up now, stand up now. The lawyers they conjoin, stand up now, stand up now. The lawyers they conjoin, stand up now. To rescue they advise, such fury they devise, the devil in them lies, and blinded both their eyes. Stand up now, stand up now. The clergy they come in, stand up now, stand up now. The clergy they come in, stand up now. The clergy they come in, and say it is a sin, that we should now begin our freedom for to win. Stand up now, diggers all, against lawyers and against priests. stand up now, stand up now. 'Gainst lawyers and 'gainst priests, stand up now. For tyrants they are both, in flat against their oath. To grant us they are loath, free meat and drink and cloth. Stand up now, diggers all.